We start by taking a deep breath in and a deep breath out. 1, 2, 3, in. 1, 2, 3, out. Now, become very aware of the currents inside you, the electricity running through your veins. Close your eyes and picture what you would look like if all the dark, twisted, grotesque stuff inside you took on the guise of physical form. He would look like this, wouldn't he? An average height male with a doughy, slightly crepuscular tummy, fitted in the kind of pseudo-spiritual clothing that you get in an Asheville gift shop, and, on top of all that, we're sporting a plastic Frankenstein mask, aren't we? Under the plume of an audacious Jufro, sure enough, all in blatant defiance of God's will and the creature's poor mother's constant lament. Yes, this is you. All the toxic, writhing, plasmic evil buried in the deepest corners of your psyche. Revealed. Part 1. The Shadow. The Victor Frankenstein of Mary Shelley's classic novel assembles his creature with near-compulsive fervor, pulled towards his heinous project as if something wretched inside him yearned to be forced out. "In a solitary chamber," says Shelley's Dr. Frankenstein, "I kept my workshop a filthy creation. My eyeballs were starting from their sockets in attending to the details of my employment, and often did my human nature turn with loathing from my occupation, whilst still urged on by an eagerness which perpetually increased, I brought my work near to a conclusion." Of this passage, David Hogsett, writing for the Journal of Christianity and Literature, describes Victor Frankenstein as creating a materialization of his unconscious inner projection. Hogsett writes, "Victor struggles with the horrifying disparity between the reality he actually sees with his own eyes and the reality he wishes this scene to be as he visualizes it in his crazed imagination." In other words, while the conscious voice of Victor desires to create a beautiful creature, something in his dark mind compels him to do otherwise. Why else would he endeavor, quote, "contrary to my first intention to make the being of a gigantic stature, that is to say, about 7 or 8 feet in height, and proportionately large." The Shadow, a coin termed and popularized by the psychologist Dr. Carl Jung, perhaps one of the two most famous psychologists of all time, Freud being the other. Dr. Jung studied the structures and dynamics of the human psyche, identifying several key structures or archetypes, which appeared to be genetically programmed into all human minds from birth. While most people know about the ego, which Jung describes as the center of the field of consciousness and the subject of all personal acts of consciousness, the shadow, on the other hand, is the ego's dark complement. I'll leave it to a Zen grandmaster to describe.
When we stumble in the dark and we don't know what it was we stumbled over, chances are really good that it was a part of yourself that you can't see.
Part 2. Anima and Animus. In Shelley's Frankenstein, Victor allows his shadow to consume him. Moreover, where Victor cannot see that he's abandoned his family to pursue an isolated career in academia, abandoning as well the love of his life, Elizabeth, we find in the mystic literature a deeper level of Victor's predicament. Scholars of the Baha'i Faith, a hermeneutical religion seeking to reconcile disparities in the major Abrahamic religions, have looked into the story of Frankenstein. On the view of Baha'i researcher Phyllis Parakis, both Victor and the monster's oppression can be related to a spiritual failure connected to a devaluation of the feminine. Both fail to acknowledge or respect the caring, nurturing dimension of the psychological, spiritual strength. This being you must create. the monster pleads to Victor Frankenstein, a female counterpart to the monster whom would endure the trials of monsterhood with him. But Victor is too terrified to do so, and the monster becomes irate and embarks on a killing spree of Victor's entire family. Going back to Dr. Jung, here Victor's terror can represent the complete defense with which his ego has obstructed the psychic structure known as the anima. According to Dr. Jung, on a level superordinate to both the ego and the shadow, male and female archetypes exist deep within the minds of human beings in infinitely varied combinations which control the expression or repression of gender characteristics. According to Carl Jung, being that the denial of the anima and animus archetypes is even stronger than the denial of the shadow, ever the more intense evils result from this baser obfuscation. Part 3. Transcend and Include. Frankenstein has stood the test of time because it so starkly criticizes how an Enlightenment period focused on the advantage of reason got so starkly out of control that empiricism and scientific materialism became viciously dogmatic. Many who have studied Shelley's novel assert that it's a critique of materialism in favor of trans-rationalism. But what if Frankenstein could be looked at not through an either-or lens, but from a lens which includes both reason and the mystic? The most renowned philosophers of Shelley's time were Nietzsche, who famously declared, "God is dead," and Hegel, who believed that all previous human knowledge should be repressed and denied. In his book A Theory of Everything, however, the philosopher and data synthesizer Ken Wilber argues that human development is premised not on Hegel's negation, but something radically different. Wilber's transcend and include principle, stating that as humans go through various mental stages of development, we acquire new knowledge and distinct worldviews, which often seem to contradict each other, but in actuality are nested within one another. The classic Ken Wilber diagram from A Theory of Everything shows how this development from pure sensori-motor to magic to mythic to rational to existential can actually describe the development of societies, cultures, arts, politics, and even the cosmos as a whole. From infancy, human beings learn first to distinguish themselves from their environment, then to distinguish themselves from one another. Then, when we're toddlers, we don't yet see the rules of the universe, and we think it's all done by magic. Eventually, we figure out the rules, and after that, around our teenage years, we look inward at how we individuals fit into that framework. Victor's educational development follows similarly. As a child, he is drawn to the magic and mythic doctrines of science. At university, however, he pursues the material sciences of chemistry and biology and rejects the so-called mythical sciences. Victor discovers what he calls the secret to life, which likely points to a scientific means by which to produce life. The contents of this secret remain a baffling mystery to readers hundreds of years after the book's publication. Both mystic and materialists alike must agree on one thing. Whatever secret that Mary Shelley has concocted, even in the fictional realm, surely straddles the line between the mythic and the rational. Perhaps, says Ken Wilber, Frankenstein's monster is a product of both stages of development, working in concert. If it were true that the monster is made of both magic and of reason, then perhaps Shelley's real criticism is not of either paradigm alone, but rather the failure of society to discern that both rationality and mysticism are integrated as but one voice of reality in humankind's pursuit of the truth. The Dharma of Frankenstein. A path that's wide but few wish to travel, but those who do come closer to knowing who they truly are. For some people, there's no choice but to face the Frankenstein within, or risk making Frankenstein monsters of our lives. You have much to seek further, my friends. This being you must create.